All right, let's get into it. When you look at Algeria's economy, you see this really interesting story of resilience. But if you peel back the layers just a little bit, there's a whole other story going on. It's a story about these unseen giants, some pretty huge risks, and a real need for change. So today, we're going to unpack what's really happening under the surface. Okay, so take a look at this. It's a fascinating balancing act. You've got the country's huge oil and gas sector, its traditional powerhouse, actually shrinking a bit. But at the same time, look at that other bar. The rest of the economy is booming, growing at a really healthy 4.2%. Now, on the surface, that looks great, right? It looks like diversification is working, but the foundation for all that growth might be a little shakier than it seems. And that's the kicker. There's this massive, almost invisible risk hiding in plain sight within the system. It's something that could seriously undermine all that great progress if it's not handled with care. So you've got to ask, what is this hidden threat? Well, that hidden threat brings us to our main event, the state's unseen giants. We're talking about Algeria's state-owned enterprises, or as you'll hear them called, SOEs. These things are a huge piece of the economic puzzle, but they mostly operate behind the curtain. So let's just make sure we're all on the same page. A state-owned enterprise is basically a company where the government is the boss, the main shareholder. And in Algeria, we're not talking about small-time operations. These are dominant players in super-critical sectors. As the IMF puts it, they play a prominent role in the entire economy. And I mean, if you want to see just how big these giants are, this chart says it all. This shows where the credit, the loans are flowing in the economy. Now, just look at that middle bar. The amount of credit given to these public corporations, the SOEs, it just completely dwarfs what the entire private sector is getting. They are, without a question, the financial heavyweights in the room. And to put a real number on this, get this. In just 1 year, 2021, the Algerian government had to step in and buy back over 2 trillion dinars worth of loans that these SOEs owed. This isn't just business as usual. It's a massive financial lifeline. And that number right there, it just shows you how deep the dependency really goes. So you're probably asking, okay, they're big, so what? Why are they such a risk? Well, it all comes down to some really serious cracks in their foundation, a fundamental lack of transparency, and some major problems with how they're run. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from the IMF report just lays it bare. The core of the problem is what we call opacity. You just can't see what's going on. The true financial health of these companies, the actual risk they pose to the country's budget, it's all incredibly hard to figure out because the information just isn't made public. Let's break down what that actually means. First off, their financial books are a closed secret. We can't see them. Second, there's very little oversight on how they're spending money. And third, their leadership boards are often packed with government officials, which, you can imagine, creates some serious potential for conflicts of interest. It's a recipe for risk. So, when you take that enormous financial scale we talked about and you mix in that poor governance, well, what you get are the ingredients for a financial storm. And this isn't just a problem for the SOEs themselves. It creates a domino effect that could send shockwaves through the whole economy. Now, to really get this domino effect, we need to quickly define a key term, a non-performing loan, or NPL. It's simple, really. It's a bad loan. It's a loan where the borrower has just stopped paying it back, and now the bank is facing a potential loss. And here's where things get really serious. In Algeria, the number of these bad loans is really high, especially in the state-owned banks, where they've hit a whopping 22.5%. And this is the crucial part. A huge chunk of these bad loans are tied directly to the very SOEs we've been talking about, often with a guarantee from the government itself. You can start to see how all these pieces are dangerously connected. This whole chain reaction, it has a name. It's called the sovereign bank nexus. And here's how it plays out step by step. 1. The SOEs take on tons of debt from public banks. 2. Because of bad performance, they can't pay it back, so those bad loans, the NPLs, they start to skyrocket. 3. This hammers the bank's finances, which creates a risk for the entire system. And finally, step 4, because the government guaranteed the loans, it's ultimately on the hook. So a problem at one company can suddenly become a problem for the entire nation. Okay, so the risk is pretty clear, right? It's interconnected, and it is big. But it's not a hopeless situation. The good news is there's a clear path forward, a way to start reining in these giants and getting things under control. So that brings us to the big question. What does that path actually look like? How can Algeria get a handle on its SOEs and reduce the very real danger they pose to the economy? Well, the recommendations really boil down to three main things. First, beef up the new oversight unit in the finance ministry and give it some real authority. Second, professionalize the boards. Get independent experts in there instead of just political appointees. And make sure management has contracts based on performance. And third, maybe the most important of all, force them to publish their audited financial statements. It's time to shine a bright light into that black box. And this slide right here, this is basically the before and after shot. The goal is to move away from the current state on the left, opaque, political, and full of hidden bombs, to a future on the right that's all about transparency, professional leadership, and active, smart oversight. It's a huge shift. And this is about so much more than just dodging a bullet. Reforming these giant companies isn't just a defensive move to stop a financial crisis. It's actually about unlocking a more dynamic, transparent, and competitive future for the whole country, one where that strong growth we saw at the very beginning can actually last. So we end with this. It's a real nail-biter of a question. The road ahead is pretty clear, but the stakes couldn't be higher. The question that's left is all about timing and political will. Can Algeria get these critical reforms in place and tame its giants before one of them finally stumbles and potentially brings the whole house down? That right there is the multi-trillion dinar question.